And we're back again. Any day I can spend here talking with you guys is a good day for me because it's a day that I'm talking about filmmaking, and that's what I love to do. Today is part 2 of the 3-part series on building a lighting kit for yourself. Yeah, if you missed the first video, go ahead and look in the link in the description. If you have seen the first video, then let's get on to part 2 really quickly and roll that bumper. So those tungsten lights were working well for me for a long while, but I kept hearing about LED lights and they were very fascinating to me, and I wanted to dip my toe into the market. So the first LED lights were a kit that came with 2 lights, a green screen for like $100, and I said, hey, that's probably a pretty good deal. Spoiler alert, it was not. It was these newer yn360s that, first time that I had an LED panel, so to speak, but these things are pretty small if you look at the size of my hand. You could power them with AA's or NPF batteries, which I hadn't seen since those Sony Handycams at the time. Yeah, these things have, I don't even know if they have CRI. There's nothing, I didn't even know what a CRI was when I bought these. There's nothing listed on the box. Anyways, I don't know what the CRI... Usually when they don't list the CRI, that's not a good thing. So at this point, I'm going to turn that light off and turn these on so you can see just what these bad boys can do. That is as bright as it gets. To the naked eye, it doesn't look that bad. So at this point, I realized that if I really wanted to get into LED lighting, I was going to have to do some homework as well as probably spend a little more money. And when I started doing research, it just happened to come out with a time when a certain company that wanted to mix very high CRI LED lights with affordability for indie filmmakers. And the name of that company, of course, is Aputure. So let's see the first Aputure light I got, which was shortly after these lights. So my first experience with buying an actual, real, what I felt was expensive light at the time was, of course, an Aputure light, because even though at the time it was expensive to me, it would have been double the price to buy it anywhere else. And that's this light, the Aputure HR672C, which is a mouthful. Luckily, they got better with naming things. And at the time, this thing was a game changer for me. It had a nice carrying case, so it was easy to carry. It was, you could have it battery powered, so I didn't have to be plugged into a wall, although it did come with a cord. It came with 2 batteries, and it was bicolor, which to me blew my mind back in whatever year I bought this. I was like, you can get tungsten or daylight or some flavor in between, sign me up. So at the time, I think I paid $250 or $300 for this light, which now would be grossly expensive, but yeah, at the time it was really worth it. It's plasticky, so it wasn't, wasn't as durable as a tungsten light, but I took really good care of it and it still works today. Let's put it on this little stand and see how it works. Another thing I wanted to point out was it's funny, it shows you how early this light was. It has this 95 plus stamp right here, which is engraved into the case, meaning it has a CRI higher than 95 plus. At the time, that was very impressive. Now a lot of lights have that, but it shows you how early on in the LED wars this light was. So I've turned it around so you can see the backside of it here. I was very excited that it had this battery indicator, even though right now it's, being plugged in. But at the time I was like, oh, you can see how long the batteries last. I don't know why I was impressed with these things, but I was. You can see here is the dimmer knob. Goes all the way down to 10%, which to me, not having to buy a separate dimmer knob was new, because with tungstens you had to do that. Then you could change the color temperature itself. That blew my mind, because at the time, again, I only had tungsten lights, so the fact that I now had a daylight light that I could still put in my tungsten kit was pretty awesome. So I'm going to turn these lights off, and oh, one more thing, it has this little diffuser on the front here. I like to keep it on because it just makes the light look overall better. And yeah, let's turn these other lights on and see how this looks. Now you can see this is full brightness with daylight. It's not as bright as my tungsten lights, but the fact that I could get this close to it and not be burning my face off was very awesome to me at the time, and really showed me that especially in the summer, in hot places, you don't want tungsten lights anymore. LED was the wave of the future. I'm going to flip it over and show you exactly how low it goes. This is at low brightness. That's as low as it goes. Switch it over to tungsten. And this is full brightness tungsten. Let me change the white balance real quick. Alright, so now we're on tungsten mode, and we've changed it accordingly on the white balance. And yeah, this is the first Aputure light I owned, and I was very happy with it, and I still am. I still pull it out from time to time. So it was at this point I really started dialing in what I wanted in a light. I wanted LEDs, but couldn't really afford them at the time without being high CRI. I knew I didn't want lights that basically looked like crap, so I needed something above 90 CRI at that time. Now it's more like 95. And the first company I found that had high CRI and low price was a company out of China called Yongnuo. And I may be pronouncing that wrong, but that's because I don't speak Chinese. The first light I found from them was this bad boy. This was something that was supposed to be like the Westcott ice light. That's how I found it. I wanted an ice light, but I didn't want to pay, I think it was $350 for an ice light. And I found this, the Yongnuo 360. And this is an awesome light. Not only do you have daylight and tungsten, but this was the first time I had ever seen RGB in a light. And this was way before the RGB trend that you see today. This was a good 4 or 5 years ago. And so Yongnuo was really ahead of the game. So, yeah, and then I bought the Yongnuo 360 Mark II, which you can see is more cylindrical. It has a built-in battery inside of it. And yeah, they're both really good lights. So I'm going to show you what they can do right now. So this is the original, the yn360, and I'm just going to cycle through. This is full power on their blue channel. And then the way this works is you have a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel, and you can turn them up and mix them as much as you can. So to get all red, you would have to turn down all the blues and turn up the reds to get all red. And vice versa to get green. But if you wanted a mix of green and blue, you can get this purplish color here by mixing those colors and vice versa. This is what it looks like, full brightness at tungsten. And to mix daylight and tungsten, it does the same thing. You have to turn down the tungsten lights and turn up the daylight lights. Whoa. Yeah, so that's the yn360 original. Now let's put this bad boy on and see what it looks like in comparison. All right, so this is the Yongnuo 360 Mark II. In full daylight mode. You can see it's got a little bit extra diffusion on it because it's all in one. It works the same way by you having to turn all the daylight down and to mix the tungsten in. This is a tungsten version. And then RGB works the same way too. You got blue, red, and then you got green. And these were really a game changer because I could add color into my shots, which at this point I didn't know was possible without using, you know, like rave lights or DJ lights or something. And I could still get, these were still high CRI. They were above 93, I think. And it really got me interested in the Yongnuo line. So then I went Yongnuo crazy, and I'll show you what that looks like. For all these Yongnuo lights I'm going to show you, I don't think I paid more than $150 for the most expensive one. And that's why I really like these lights and why I really got into them, because it was at a point where I couldn't afford the high-end lights, even like Aputure lights on a consistent basis. But I could buy these Yongnuo lights and still be able to afford it. Now, most of these next lights I'm going to show you are all daylight, which is all I needed because I already had the tungsten lights I needed at the time. So I went with a bunch of daylight. So this little guy is called the Yongnuo 300 Air, and the reason these Air ones, they have these built-on diffusers, which takes away a little bit from the power, but really gives it a soft light. I'll show you what that looks like here. So yeah, that's the YN 300 Air, and I don't remember, I think this was like $50 or something like that. So those last three lights are lights I still use, but not very often. From here on out, these are lights I use all the time. First of all, the YN Yongnuo 600 lights you see on every video. They're the ones lighting my backdrops right here. I'm going to pull one off and put it up here and show you what I'm talking about. So these were the first Yongnuo lights that really packed a little bit of a punch that I could really start using with that other Aputure panel. And yeah, I use them mostly for my backlights now, but at the time I used them for key and fill lights. I'll show you what that looks like here. So yeah, this is with no diffusion, obviously. All these are without diffusion. I'll show you that in another video, how to make these lights even softer. And I liked them so much, I bought 2 of them. The other one, like I said, I use them both to light up my backgrounds. And these are just daylight lights, but that's all I needed at the time. They're like $100, something like that, for all this daylight LED power, especially at that time. I couldn't beat it. Now I'm kind of rushing through these lights because I don't want this video to be a half an hour long, but all of these lights come with both a way to plug them into the wall, and they have battery ports so you can plug Sony MPF batteries into them, as well as having remote controls, which is always a good thing in lighting. So I really like these 600s so much that I was really excited when Yongnuo came out with the 600 version with RGB. Let me show you what that looks like. Now this is the yn360 RGB. The first thing you'll notice is it doesn't have barn doors like the other ones do over here, and it has more of a frosted diffusion that you can't take off. But other than that, it's a bigger light, probably to fit all that RGB power in there. And other than that, it's bicolor RGB. I mean, what more could you want from a panel? So it's a little bit different than some panels. This side controls the power for the daylight and tungsten lights, and this side for the RGB, where you, again, you have to turn all the way down on the blue to get other colors to pop up. So let's see what this looks like when I turn off this light over here. So this is the red channel on this panel. Let's check out this is the green channel, and this is the blue channel. Now, Yongnuo does have an app control for some of these lights, but it's all in Chinese, and I don't know how to speak Chinese, so I couldn't get it to work. But I have seen other people that have had success with it. Now, when I said this is bicolor, I'm actually mistaken. It's daylight only RGB. So, again, it wasn't something I had a problem with. I don't know why I made that mistake, because the 600s are only daylight, so why wouldn't this be? But this is how much power you get out of full brightness with the yn360 RGB. Now, I'm not a big fan of the way these lights deal with RGB, how you have to turn one all the way up. If you want to get purple, you have to dial it in all perfect. I like how the small video lights that I've shown in the past kind of have a 0 to 360 way of dealing with all the colors. But for the price, I'm really not going to argue about it because it's a big panel that has RGB for a very low price. Now, when I was finding all these Yongnuo lights, I found a company called Viltrox that also makes some cheaply made LED lights that have high CRIs. And they're nothing too crazy. This is, I believe, daylight only. Yeah, daylight only panel. Let me turn that off so you can see how bright it is. This is the Viltrox L116T. It's a lot different than most. It's kind of got that air pattern where it's got the diffusion over the top, and it gives you a really soft light. And again, I was wrong. This is not daylight only. This is bicolor, so I can switch this over to tungsten. It actually only goes to 3300 Kelvin, but still, that's pretty darn close to tungsten if you ask me, and if you ask anybody, because I don't make up the tungsten values. Anyways, that's this Viltrox light. Let me show you the Viltrox RB10. So this is the Viltrox RB10, and it's a bicolor light that goes from 8500 Kelvin all the way down to 2500 Kelvin. So let's see what that looks like real quick. Let me put it at daylight first at 5600. This is full power. Yeah, it's full power. So with no diffusion or anything on it, that's what that looks like. You can bring it all the way up to 8500 Kelvin or bring it down to tungsten, 3200 Kelvin. And if you really want to orange it up like you're at a campfire, see if it goes down to 2500 Kelvin. So that's the RB10 from Viltrox. I have one more Viltrox light to show you, and then we'll move on. I forgot I lent out the other Viltrox light I have. It's basically just like the RB10, only it has RGB. You guys know what RGB looks like by now. I've been showing you all day. But yeah, so that's the other Viltrox light I have. Well, that'll do it for the really affordable LED lights on my list. There's a couple others that might be in the next video that are still pretty affordable, but I put them with the more professional lights just because I use them more and I see them more professionally, even though I do get a lot of use out of the lights I showed in this video. If you like this video, you know what to do. Hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to me. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, go ahead and hit me up in the comments below. And just remember, it's not a competition. Let's all rise in this business together. I'll see you guys next time.